Because of my job, I've had the opportunity to do a lot of talk radio shows. I've done about 100 talk radio shows in the last 2 months, and it's a really fascinating experience because I get to hear people's questions, hear their comments and their concerns, and you can hear the anxiety, the anger, the fear in people's voices, the confusion about what's happening, and a deep yearning to understand. This morning I want to reflect with you about the meaning of the economic crisis for our lives. What will it mean for us personally? How will we weather the storm? How will we increase our security? What might we do together to increase economic security in our community and planet? I recently had coffee with a friend of mine who I'll call Edith, just to honor her confidentiality, who is my age, single woman, lives in an apartment here in Jamaica Plain, and she was telling me about her job working in a human services organization here in the city, and how worried she was that she was going to lose her job. And I said, in a kind of light way, I said, well, you can always come live with us. And she started to cry. And I said, you can come live with Tricia, Nora, and I, if it gets that bad. At which point she started to sob. And then what flashed through my head was, as long as we have a house, you can come live with us. And I realized how close, how quick we go to our most vulnerable place as we hear this news about the economy. In the coming year, I believe that this economic crisis will worsen and that economic security for millions of people will further erode. And this economic crisis is not something that's out there. I know it's here in this room. I love the Rabbi Pesner's invocation, our responsive reading that David read. I was there when he read it at the inauguration of Deval Patrick. Were any of you there and heard Rabbi Pesner read this amazing invocation? It was a great example of the invocation upstaging the event, right? It was remarkable. But in his words, look around, is what he said. Look around. And at that time there were 5,000 people. Look at the faces. See behind those faces are stories of private pain. It's not out there. It's here. And the scary thing to me is that many people will face these challenges in isolation. Even those of us connected to a religious community or a union or a civic group may be embarrassed or ashamed to reach out for help. In the reading I read this morning, the bleak reading about what would a depression look like, Drake Bennett says, basically gives this image of hollowed out neighborhoods. And the picture in the Globe was the light on over the garage, for some of you who've read the article in the ideas section. The houses that are, neighborhoods that are an empty house, a foreclosed house, an empty house next to an overcrowded house as people come together and live in one house. And the blue flicker of a TV light in the window as you walk through the neighborhood in the evening. Today's economic downturn, Bennett says, wouldn't be characterized by the images we have of the 1930s, but by isolation. Isolation. In precarious times, he writes, hunkering down can become not simply a defense mechanism, but a worldview. I think the article misses some of the silver lining of people being together, slowing down, sharing food, meals at home, the potential for community building. But I think he's right about the risks and potential of isolation. A Duke University study I read this year said that 25% of the population has no one that they can confide in about their greatest personal troubles. And that's twice as many people from 20 years ago. That's a growing number of people socially isolated. The coming years will present us with a struggle over what kind of economy and what kind of society we will become. But here's the good news. If we do this right, if we organize and stay engaged and work hard, our lives will be better. Our families and the fabric of our communities will be stronger, and we will live in greater harmony with the earth. Theologian Walter Brueggemann calls us to move from autonomy to covenantal existence, from anxiety to divine abundance, from acquisitive greed to neighborly generosity. Not exactly a bumper sticker. From autonomy to covenantal existence. Okay, I think of autonomy as individualism, being isolated. Covenantal existence. We as a congregation know something about covenant, about understanding that we hold this institution together. Our minister is not here. We're holding it together. We promise to hold one another in this institution together. That's our covenant here. From anxiety to divine abundance. From acquisitive greed to neighborly generosity. Easy for a theologian to say. But how do we do this? One starting point, I think, is to unpack the values and messages our culture communicates about the economy that keep us apart. One of the dominant messages I think of is as the yo-yo message. You are on your own. Yo-yo, you are on your own. Retirement, you need to figure it out on your own. Healthcare, you are on your own. Caring for family members with great needs, you need to invent your own playbook. We are told we need to be self-sufficient, economically self-sufficient. But Brueggemann says this autonomy, this form of extreme individualism, is a myth. It's an aberration of modern times. This individual that resists communitarian connectedness. Another scary message, I think, is some people are going to be left behind. The images of Katrina reinforce this. You may be left behind. Others may go, but you may be left behind because you're old, or brown, or black, or disabled, or poor, or you missed some opportunity, or your wrist hurts, or whatever it is that holds you back, that message that somehow some will be left behind. These are the kinds of messages in the economy that keep us apart. They block our possibilities for covenantal existence. I think one of the realities we have to grapple with is that everything is going to change. We're not going to go back to some golden age of 2006 or 1986 or 1956. Never again will our economy be based on an unchallenged empire, nor will we have an economy based on cheap, free, low-cost energy or dumping carbon into the atmosphere without consequence. The earth simply cannot sustain the United States having an economy based on our past levels of consumption. These ecological constraints are knocking on the door. The global climate crisis and the water crisis all will come to collect their costs. Our landfills, our planet, our basements cannot sustain the levels of consumption. The premise that we, 5% of the population, will consume 30 or 40% of the world's resources is not sustainable. We're not going back to some model of growth that we've known. We have to go forward.